You didn't write this. Dr. Eleanor Whitmore's words stopped the classroom cold. Sophia Carter stood beside her desk, staring at the 23-page research paper lying beneath her teacher's hand. Outside the tall windows of Franklin High School in Philadelphia, late afternoon sunlight washed across the glass, but inside room 214, the air suddenly felt still. 27 students were watching her. Some looked curious. Others looked doubtful. One student quietly closed his laptop. Dr. Whitmore lifted the first page. This paper contains archival references that are extremely difficult to locate, she said. The language is unusually advanced, and several of these sources aren't available through our school database. Her eyes settled on Sophia. So I'll ask you directly. Did you write this paper? Sophia felt the warmth rise into her cheeks, but she kept her hands still at her sides. She was 17, a black student who usually preferred the back corner of the classroom, where she could listen without becoming part of the conversation. She had never been interested in attention. She was interested in questions. Old questions. Forgotten questions. Questions that seemed to disappear whenever a textbook reached the end of a chapter. Yes, ma'am, Sophia answered. Dr. Whitmore watched her carefully. Then tell me where you found these sources. Sophia took one slow breath. I can show you. A murmur moved through the room. Dr. Whitmore placed the paper flat on the desk. Sophia, this is an academic integrity concern. If you used an outside service, copied someone else's research, or relied on an AI program to produce this paper, you need to tell me now. Sophia shook her head. I didn't. Then you should have no problem verifying every major claim. I can. Her voice remained quiet. That seemed to make the room even quieter. Dr. Whitmore turned to page 14. Her finger stopped beside a citation written in Sophia's neat handwriting. Let's start here. Sophia leaned forward. This reference is supposed to be from the Philadelphia Municipal Archives. Yes. Our database doesn't show it. Sophia's eyes moved to the reference number. 19B 417. She knew those numbers by heart. She had copied them from an old catalog card during one of her many afternoons at the city library. She remembered the faded paper. She remembered the handwritten notation beside the record. She remembered checking the number twice before putting it into her research notes. But none of that changed what the school database said. The document could not be found. Dr. Whitmore folded her arms. If this record cannot be verified, then the central argument of your paper is unsupported. Sophia looked down at the pages. Her research examined a forgotten black neighborhood in Philadelphia, a community that had once existed near an area later transformed by redevelopment. Official summaries described it in only a few paragraphs. Sophia had discovered inconsistencies between those summaries and older records. One newspaper article mentioned families who were missing from later reports. A property map suggested buildings that did not appear in the final city record. Then she found a reference to an archive entry that seemed to connect everything. She had spent 6 weeks following that trail after school, sometimes sitting beneath fluorescent library lights until the building announced closing time. She had not done it for extra credit. She had done it because the story felt unfinished. Dr. Whitmore tapped the citation once. Maybe you copied the wrong catalog number. Sophia looked at her. I don't think I did. You're certain? Yes, ma'am. A student near the window shifted in his chair. Someone whispered. Maybe she made the whole thing up. Sophia heard the words. She did not look toward the voice. Dr. Whitmore picked up the paper again. You understand that a research paper isn't about believing what you want to be true. Sophia nodded. I know. It's about evidence. Sophia's fingers tightened around the strap of her backpack. I know that too. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The clock above the whiteboard clicked forward. 1 second, then another. Sophia could feel the weight of the room pressing against her. She could argue. She could insist that she was telling the truth. Instead, she opened her notebook. Pages of handwritten dates, names, reference numbers, and locations filled it from beginning to end. She turned to the page marked with a small blue tab. Can I have until tomorrow morning? Dr. Whitmore raised an eyebrow. For what? Sophia closed the notebook. To find the document you say doesn't exist. No one laughed this time. Dr. Whitmore studied her for several seconds before giving a restrained nod. 8 o'clock. My office. Sophia gathered her papers and slipped them into her folder. As she walked toward the door, she glanced back at the research paper still resting on the teacher's desk. 6 weeks of work had been reduced to one accusation and one missing archive number. Outside, the hallway was already filling with footsteps, voices, and the metallic sound of lockers opening and closing. Sophia stepped into the noise and kept walking. She did not know yet whether the missing document would prove her right or expose a mistake she had overlooked. But she knew one thing. Somewhere in Philadelphia, an old record had once been cataloged under 19B 417. And by 8 o'clock the next morning, Sophia intended to find out why it had disappeared. Sophia did not go home after leaving Franklin High School. She walked 3 blocks through the cool Philadelphia evening, her backpack heavy against one shoulder and her notebook pressed against her chest. Buses sighed at the curb. Tires whispered over damp pavement. Storefront lights reflected in the wet sidewalks. But Sophia barely noticed any of it. Her mind was still inside room 214, fixed on the same question Dr. Whitmore had asked. Where did you find that source? She already knew the answer. The problem was proving it. At 4:41 in the afternoon, Sophia entered the research floor of the Free Library of Philadelphia and headed toward the reference section. She found an empty table beneath a long row of fluorescent lights, placed her notebook in front of her, and wrote one thing across the top of a clean page. 19B 417. Then she underlined it twice. The number looked ordinary. It was not. 6 weeks earlier, Sophia had never heard of it. Her research had started with a school assignment about Philadelphia history, but the deeper she went, the less satisfied she became with the official summaries. She had chosen a forgotten black neighborhood because the textbooks barely mentioned it. At first, she expected to find a simple story. Instead, she found contradictions. An old newspaper described a busy community with churches, small stores, families, and neighborhood organizations. A later city report described much of the same area as nearly empty before redevelopment. Sophia noticed the difference immediately. She began checking property maps, then census records, then newspaper archives. Every source seemed to raise another question. Some family names appeared in one document and disappeared from another. Certain addresses changed between records. Buildings mentioned in newspapers were absent from later maps. None of those details proved anything by themselves, but together they created a pattern Sophia could not ignore. That was why she kept digging. She was not trying to make history more dramatic. She was trying to understand why pieces of it no longer matched. She opened the library database and typed 19B 417 into the search field. Nothing. She tried again. Still nothing. Sophia leaned back and stared at the screen. For the first time that evening, doubt reached her. Maybe she had copied the number incorrectly. Maybe she had misunderstood the archivist. Maybe Dr. Whitmore had found the mistake before she had. Sophia opened her notebook and turned through the pages. Dates, names, street addresses, collection numbers, handwritten notes. Then she stopped. There it was. Beneath the archive number, she had written a date and a location. October 12th, Municipal Research Room. Sophia remembered that afternoon clearly. She had arrived after school with a permission form, 3 sharpened pencils, and a list of questions. An older archivist had helped her search through a cabinet filled with printed catalog cards. The cards were pale with age, and many contained handwritten notes that did not appear anywhere in the digital system. The archivist had found the reference Sophia needed. She had copied the number carefully. She had asked whether the record was digitized. The answer had been no. Sophia had assumed that it could still be located physically. Now she wondered if there was another problem. She looked again at her notes. Beside the reference number was a tiny mark she had almost forgotten. For -62. She stared at it. Then she searched for 4-62. Nothing appeared in the school database. Nothing appeared in the public digital catalog either. But Sophia had learned something during 6 weeks of research. When one search failed, the answer was sometimes hiding inside the next search. She entered the street address connected to her original source. Dozens of results appeared. She opened a property map, then a city directory, then an old newspaper collection. At 6:07, she found a name she recognized. It belonged to a member of the redevelopment committee mentioned in one of the documents she had already studied. Sophia turned back to page 11 of her paper. The same name was there. Her eyes moved between the 2 sources. One connection became 2. 2 became 3. The missing record was still missing, but the trail was becoming clearer. At 7:18, Sophia had filled 4 pages of her notebook. She stopped and looked at the growing chain of references. There was no dramatic discovery. No single document had suddenly appeared. Instead, the evidence was beginning to behave like a map. Every answer pointed toward another location. Sophia packed her notes and approached the reference desk. The librarian looked at the pages in her hands. "Still working on that project?" she asked. Sophia nodded. "I think I found a way back to the original record." The librarian smiled. "Then you had better keep following it." Sophia stepped outside a few minutes later. The rain had stopped, leaving the sidewalks dark and shining beneath the streetlights. She looked down at the small handwritten notation in her notebook, 4-62. She still did not know what it meant, but she knew it had been written beside the archive reference for a reason. And if the digital catalog could not find the document, Sophia would have to look somewhere the digital catalog could not reach. At 7:52 the next morning, Sophia Carter stood outside Dr. Eleanor Whitmore's office with her notebook pressed against her chest and the same archive number written across the top of 3 fresh pages. 19B 417. She had slept for barely 5 hours, but she had not wasted a minute of the evening. The trail she found at the library had led to another property map, then to a city directory, then to a newspaper clipping from 1962. It was not enough to prove everything. It was enough to prove that the question deserved a deeper search. At exactly 8 o'clock, the office door opened. "Come in," Dr. Whitmore said. Sophia stepped inside. The teacher was already seated behind her desk, with yesterday's research paper beside a cup of coffee and a stack of student assignments. Morning light rested across the wooden floor. "Did you find the document?" Dr. Whitmore asked. Sophia placed her notebook on the desk. "Not yet." The teacher's expression tightened slightly. "Then what did you find?" Sophia opened to the first page. "A trail." Dr. Whitmore looked at the handwritten references. "Sophia, a trail is not evidence." "I know. Your paper makes a specific claim." "I know. And the source supporting that claim cannot be verified through the school system." Sophia nodded. "That is why I checked outside the school system." Dr. Whitmore leaned back. "Where?" Sophia began laying out her notes. "The city directory, a property map, a newspaper archive, and an older catalog reference from the municipal research room." Dr. Whitmore looked at the pages one by one. Her skepticism did not disappear. If anything, it became more focused. "You are telling me the school database is incomplete." "I think the digital catalog is incomplete." "That is a serious statement." "It is also testable." The teacher paused. Sophia pointed to a newspaper clipping. "This article lists a redevelopment committee member named Charles Mercer. His name appears again in this property record." She moved to another page. "The address in this record connects to the same block described in my paper." Dr. Whitmore studied the information. "But none of this proves that 19B 417 exists." "No," Sophia's answer came immediately. "Not yet." That answer seemed to surprise the teacher. Sophia was not trying to force a conclusion. She was showing how she had reached it. Dr. Whitmore picked up the newspaper clipping and read the date. October 1962. "Yes. Your original paper says the redevelopment process began around this period. The public record says that. But the newspaper suggests meetings were happening earlier." Dr. Whitmore looked back at Sophia. "Where did you get this copy?" "The library archive." "And you verified the publication?" "Yes." The teacher was quiet for a moment. Then she opened Sophia's research paper to page 11. Her finger followed one paragraph slowly. "You wrote that the official timeline may have compressed several separate stages into one." "Yes." "That is a strong conclusion for a high school paper." Sophia lowered her eyes. "I know. So why make it?" Sophia looked up. "Because the records kept contradicting each other." The words hung between them. Dr. Whitmore closed the paper. "There is another issue." Sophia waited. "Your writing style." The teacher tapped the pages. "This is not the same voice I see in your earlier assignments." Sophia felt that familiar heat return to her face. "I spent more time on this one." "How much more?" "A lot." "How much?" Sophia hesitated. "About 6 weeks." Dr. Whitmore studied her carefully. 6 weeks. After school. Mostly at the library. The teacher looked toward the window. Outside, students were crossing the courtyard with backpacks and paper cups. "You understand why I questioned it?" Sophia nodded. "Yes." "Then you also understand why I cannot simply accept your explanation." "I am not asking you to accept it." Sophia closed her notebook. "I am asking you to help me find the record." For the first time, Dr. Whitmore's expression changed. Not into approval. Not yet. But into attention. She opened a drawer and pulled out a printed sheet from the school database. I searched the reference again last night. Sophia looked at the page. The same result appeared in bold letters. NO record found. Dr. Whitmore pointed beneath it. There is a secondary catalog used for older municipal collections. Our school does not normally access it. Sophia's eyes lifted. Where is it? The city archive. Sophia stared at her. You believe it might be there? Dr. Whitmore shook her head. I believe your claim has become specific enough to test properly. She handed Sophia the paper. If you want to prove your research, start there. Sophia took it carefully. The room became quiet again. Yesterday, she had walked out of the classroom carrying an accusation. Today, she walked out carrying a direction. But as she reached the hallway, she noticed something written in the corner of the teacher's page. A collection code. For -62. The same number from her notebook. Sophia stopped walking. For the first time, the missing record did not feel like a dead end. It felt like a door. Sophia arrived at the Philadelphia Municipal Archives just after 10 in the morning, carrying the printed reference Dr. Whitmore had given her in one hand and her notebook in the other. The building felt different from Franklin High School. There were no crowded hallways, no ringing bells, and no lockers opening and closing. Only the quiet sound of footsteps across polished floors, the soft hum of the heating system, and the faint scent of old paper drifting from the research rooms. Sophia checked in at the front desk and explained that she was searching for a municipal record connected to collection code 4-62. The archivist, a woman named Margaret Ellis, looked at the reference sheet for several seconds. Where did you get this number? She asked. An old catalog card, Sophia replied. Margaret looked up. An old catalog card? Yes, I found it during my research. Margaret turned the paper toward herself again. This collection is not in the public digital catalog. Sophia nodded. That is why I came here. Margaret studied her for a moment, then reached beneath the desk and pulled out a thick paper index. She carried it to a nearby table and opened it carefully. The pages were pale and slightly curled at the edges. Each one contained rows of handwritten numbers, collection names, dates, and short descriptions. Sophia stood beside her, trying not to move too quickly. Margaret turned one page, then another, then another. The room seemed unusually quiet. Finally, her finger stopped. There it is. Sophia leaned closer. Collection 4-62. Municipal Redevelopment Correspondence. Her eyes moved across the faded entry. The number was real. The collection was real. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she pointed to a small notation beneath it. What does that mean? Margaret adjusted her glasses. Transferred material. Sophia looked up. Transferred where? Margaret turned to another page. That is what we need to determine. She searched through several additional entries until she found a handwritten note in the margin. Here, Sophia followed the archivist's finger. The collection had been transferred in 1987. The original materials had been divided during the transfer, and the receiving institution was listed in a separate record. Sophia's attention moved immediately to the final line. 19-B-417, she whispered. Margaret looked at her. That is your missing reference. Sophia nodded. It was the same number she had written in her research paper. The same number Dr. Whitmore had questioned. The same number the school database could not locate. But now it was sitting in an official municipal index. Sophia reached for her notebook and copied every detail carefully. Can I see the actual document? She asked. Margaret's expression became more cautious. Not today. Sophia looked disappointed. Why not? The collection is still being processed. Some materials are restricted from general research access until the inventory is complete. Sophia glanced at the clock. It was 10:46 in the morning. She had come all this way hoping to return to school with the missing evidence. Instead, she had found another question. How long would access take? She asked. Usually several days. Sophia lowered her eyes to her notes. Several days was too long. Dr. Whitmore had asked her to verify the source, not simply prove that an old collection once existed. Margaret seemed to notice the disappointment in her face. There is another possibility, she said. Sophia looked up. Margaret turned the index toward her and pointed to the transfer notation. The original material may not be available here, but the transfer record is. What does that show? When the collection moved, who authorized the transfer, what materials were included, and where they were sent? Margaret opened another folder. Inside was a typed transfer sheet from 1987. Sophia read each line slowly. The collection had been moved to a university archive in New Jersey. Several boxes were listed by number. Then Sophia saw the description attached to box 23. Redevelopment correspondence. Neighborhood relocation. Property review. Her breathing became slower. That is part of my research, she said. Margaret nodded. It appears so. Sophia looked again. There was another notation beside the box number. 19B 417. The room seemed to become very still. The missing source had not been invented. It had been transferred. Margaret made a photocopy of the transfer record and handed it to Sophia. This does not prove the contents of the box, she explained. But it proves that the reference existed and that the material was transferred. Sophia accepted the pages with both hands. It was not the final answer, but it was the first official record she could place in front of Dr. Whitmore. She thanked Margaret and carefully slid the photocopy into her folder. As Sophia walked toward the entrance, she looked down at the reference number one more time. Yesterday, 19B for 17 had made her look dishonest. Today, it had become a verified archival trail, and that trail had just led her across the Delaware River to New Jersey. Sophia returned to the university archive before sunrise, carrying her research paper in a blue folder and her notebook tucked carefully beneath one arm. The streets were still quiet, and the November air had that sharp morning chill that made every breath feel clear. She had barely slept. All night, one sentence had remained in her mind. Original correspondence enclosed. At 8:12 in the morning, Daniel Brooks met her inside the Special Collections reading room. He was carrying a thin archival folder sealed inside a protective sleeve. You asked for 19B 417, he said. Sophia nodded. Yes. Daniel placed the folder on the table, but did not open it. This was separated from the municipal collection during processing. Sophia looked at the label. The number was there in faded black ink. 19B 417. For 6 weeks, she had searched for those characters across databases, catalog cards, property records, newspaper archives, and transfer inventories. Now they were sitting less than 2 feet from her. Is this the original? She asked. Daniel nodded. According to the transfer documentation, yes. Sophia sat down slowly. Her hands rested beside the folder. She did not reach for it immediately. There is something unusual about it, Daniel continued. The archivist who processed this collection placed one page separately because it contains information that does not appear in the main inventory. Sophia looked up. What kind of information? You will need to read it yourself. Daniel opened the protective sleeve. Inside was a small group of documents, each carefully preserved. The first page was a typed letter dated October 18, 1962. Sophia read the sender's name, Charles Mercer. Her eyes moved down the page. It concerned a redevelopment meeting and several properties scheduled for review. She recognized 2 addresses from the property map in her notebook. Then she saw a sentence that made her stop. The letter referred to residents who had been asked to relocate before the final public notice was issued. Sophia read the line again. Then she turned the page. The next document was a handwritten list of names and addresses. Sophia compared them with the newspaper records she had collected. One name appeared in an article from October 1962. Another appeared in a property record from the following year. The pattern was becoming impossible to dismiss. But Sophia kept reading. The final page was the one marked separately. It was a memorandum dated October 23, 1962. The language was formal, careful, almost ordinary. But one paragraph contained the details Sophia had been searching for. It stated that several residents had already been relocated before the redevelopment process was publicly described as beginning. Sophia's eyes remained fixed on the date. Her entire argument had depended on that timeline. The official history suggested the process began later. Her research had argued that the process had started earlier and unfolded in stages. Now the original correspondence supported her conclusion. She looked at Daniel. This changes the timeline. Daniel nodded. That is what the document appears to show. Sophia turned another page. At the bottom of the memorandum was a handwritten notation. See attached property review. She searched the folder. There was no attached property review. Her excitement stopped. The evidence was stronger than anything she had found before, but the page referenced another document that was not included. Where is the property review? She asked. Daniel checked the inventory. It is listed under a different file. Sophia looked at the clock. 8:39. She had already found the original correspondence, but the archive had revealed another missing piece. Daniel searched the catalog and found a second reference number. This file is here, he said, but it is in a different collection. Sophia closed her eyes for a moment. She could almost hear Dr. Whitmore saying that one source was not enough. Sophia opened her notebook and wrote the new number carefully. Then she placed the original memorandum beside her research paper. The words in her paper were no longer based only on interpretation. They were connected to a primary source dated October 23, 1962. But Sophia knew better than to stop there. She had learned something during the past 6 weeks. The strongest answer was not the first answer that looked convincing. It was the answer that survived every question. Daniel returned with another folder. "This is the property review file," he said. Sophia looked at it. The folder was thicker than the first one. "Are you ready?" he asked. Sophia placed one hand on her notebook and nodded. "I have been looking for this since the day I started." Daniel opened the folder. The first page slid gently into view. Sophia looked down. Then her expression changed. The document contained a date that was even earlier than the one in her paper. The room became completely still. Sophia did not speak. She simply stared at the date printed at the top of the property review. October 3, 1962. 3 weeks earlier than the date described in the official city timeline. The fluorescent light above the reading table hummed softly, and the pale glow from the windows rested across the old documents. Daniel Brooks stood quietly on the other side of the table, giving her time to take in what she was seeing. Sophia placed one finger beside the date and read it again. October 3rd. Then she looked at the letter dated October 18th. Then the memorandum dated October 23rd. 3 documents. 3 dates. 1 sequence. She slowly moved them into a straight line across the table. The property review came first. It listed several addresses and indicated that relocation discussions had already begun. The October 18th letter referred to those discussions. The October 23rd memorandum described the same process in more formal language. Nothing about the documents was dramatic. There were no bold statements, no dramatic declarations, just dates, names, addresses, and carefully preserved records. And somehow, that made them more powerful. Sophia opened her research paper to page 11. Her original argument suddenly looked different. She had written that the redevelopment process appeared to have begun earlier than the official timeline suggested. When she wrote those words, she had only scattered evidence. Newspaper articles, property maps, catalog references, contradictory summaries. She had built a careful interpretation from incomplete pieces. Now the original records were giving that interpretation a foundation. Sophia turned the property review over and noticed a handwritten note near the bottom of the page. The handwriting was much newer than the original text. It appeared to have been added by an archivist years later. Sophia leaned closer. The note was short. Original chronology differs from later summary. She read it again. Then she looked at Daniel. "Someone already noticed this," she said quietly. Daniel nodded. That note was added during a later review. Sophia sat back. For 6 weeks, she had wondered whether she was seeing something that was not really there. Now an archivist had independently recorded the same discrepancy. She thought about the classroom. Dr. Whitmore holding her paper. The question about whether she had written it herself. The uncomfortable silence after Sophia said yes. She remembered how small the room had felt when the teacher said her central argument was unsupported. But sitting there now, Sophia did not feel the need to fight that moment. She only wanted the evidence to be accurate. Daniel placed a blank sheet beside her notebook. "Write down every reference," he said. "Collection number, box number, document dates, and page numbers." Sophia nodded and began writing. She moved slowly, checking every number twice. Collection 4 to 62. Box 23. Reference 19, B, 417. October 3rd, October 18th, October 23rd. She recorded the title of each document and the location where it had been preserved. When she finished, she compared her notes with the originals. One number was wrong. Sophia caught it immediately and corrected it. Daniel watched without interrupting. "That is why researchers check their notes," he said. Sophia gave a small smile. "I almost proved them right." Daniel shook his head. "You caught the mistake before it became part of your argument." Sophia looked at the corrected number. That mattered. Being right was not the same as being careful. She had learned that during the search. Before leaving, Sophia asked whether the archive could provide written confirmation of the records she had reviewed. Daniel explained that the archive could issue a verification statement listing the relevant collections and documents. Sophia thanked him and placed the copies carefully inside her blue folder. Outside, the November air was cold and clean. She stood on the university steps for a moment, holding the folder close. The city around her was ordinary. Cars passed. People walked along the sidewalk. A bus stopped at the corner. But inside that folder were records created decades before she was born, records that had survived transfers between institutions and years outside the digital catalog. On the train back to Philadelphia, Sophia watched the landscape pass beyond the window. She thought about how easily history could become simplified. A date could disappear from a summary. A name could be left out. A complicated process could become one sentence in a textbook. Sometimes, recovering the missing pieces required more than intelligence. It required patience. It required asking the same question after everyone else had stopped asking it. By the time Sophia reached Philadelphia, the sky had turned pale gold. She walked home and placed the documents on the kitchen table beneath the warm light. Her mother, Denise, looked at the folder. "Did you find what you were looking for?" she asked. Sophia opened it carefully and looked at the records one more time. "I found the evidence behind it," she said. Then she closed the folder. Tomorrow morning, she would return to Franklin High School. This time, she would not walk into Dr. Whitmore's office with a theory. She would walk in with the archive, the dates, the references, and the truth written in black ink. At 8:03 the next morning, Sophia Carter stood outside Dr. Eleanor Whitmore's office with a blue folder pressed against her chest. Inside were photocopies, archive references, transfer records, and 3 dates that had changed everything. October 3rd, October 18th, October 23rd. Yesterday, Sophia had walked into the university archive hoping to find one missing document. She had walked out with something much stronger. A chain of primary sources that connected the disputed reference in her paper to an official collection and a timeline that differed from the later summary. The office door opened. "Come in, Sophia." Dr. Whitmore was seated behind her desk, and Sophia noticed that her research paper was still there. The same 23 pages. The same marked citation on page 14. But this time, Sophia did not feel the same nervousness she had felt 2 days earlier. She placed the blue folder on the desk. "I found the archive," she said. Dr. Whitmore looked at the folder but did not touch it yet. "Tell me what you found." Sophia opened the first page. The reference number is real. It belongs to collection 4-62, Municipal Redevelopment Correspondence. She placed the first photocopy beside the teacher's coffee cup. The collection was transferred in 1987. Part of it went to a university archive in New Jersey. Dr. Whitmore read the transfer record carefully. Her expression remained serious. "And the document?" "I found the original correspondence." Sophia placed another copy on the desk. Reference 19B417. Dr. Whitmore looked at the number. Her eyes stayed there for several seconds. "Where did this come from?" "The university archive." Sophia turned to the next page. "This is the October 18th letter." Then another. "This is the October 23rd memorandum." Finally, she placed the property review on top. "And this one is dated October 3rd. Dr. Whitmore looked from one document to another. "Your paper says the redevelopment process began earlier than the official summary indicates." "Yes. And these documents support that? They show that relocation discussions were already being documented on October 3rd. Dr. Whitmore picked up the first page again. She read the date, then the second, then the third. The classroom bell rang somewhere down the hallway, but neither woman moved. Sophia remained standing quietly. She did not interrupt. She had learned that evidence became stronger when you allowed people time to examine it. Dr. Whitmore turned to page 11 of Sophia's original paper. "You wrote that the official timeline may have compressed several stages into one." "Yes." "How did you reach that conclusion before finding these documents?" Sophia answered carefully. "The newspaper articles gave me the earlier dates. The property maps showed addresses that matched the later records. The archive reference connected those pieces. I thought the missing correspondence might explain the difference." Dr. Whitmore looked back at the documents. "You were not certain." "No, but you were willing to make the claim because the pattern was strong enough to investigate." Sophia nodded. "Yes. Something changed in the room. It was subtle. The teacher was no longer examining Sophia as though she were defending herself against an accusation. She was examining the research itself. Dr. Whitmore picked up the verification statement from the archive. This confirms the collection and the documents you reviewed. She placed it beside Sophia's paper. It does. Sophia waited. Dr. Whitmore turned to the page where the disputed citation had been marked in red. She looked at it for a long moment. Then she uncapped a pen. Sophia watched as the red mark disappeared beneath a single careful line. "I need to revise my assessment," Dr. Whitmore said. Sophia said nothing. "Your citation was correct." The words were quiet, almost ordinary. But Sophia felt the weight of them. 2 days earlier, that citation had been the reason her entire paper was questioned. Now it was the piece of evidence that had opened the door to the archive. Dr. Whitmore continued reading. "There is something else." Sophia looked up. "Your argument is stronger than I originally thought, but your wording needs to distinguish clearly between what the primary sources prove and what you infer from them." Sophia nodded immediately. "I can revise that." Dr. Whitmore gave her the paper. "Do that, and add the archive references." Sophia took it back. Then the teacher paused. "Sophia." She looked up. "You were right to keep looking." Sophia stood quietly for a moment. She could have reminded her teacher of the accusation. She could have asked why her ability had been questioned in the first place. Instead, she simply said, "Thank you for checking." Dr. Whitmore looked down at the documents again. Outside the office, students were moving through the hallway, unaware that a 23-page paper had just forced a much larger question into the open. Sophia gathered her folder and walked toward the door. Behind her, Dr. Whitmore remained at the desk, reading the October 3rd document one more time. This time, she was not searching for a reason to doubt Sophia. She was searching for what else the archive might reveal. By Friday afternoon, the story had traveled beyond Dr. Whitmore's office. Sophia had not told anyone what happened, but students had noticed that her research paper was no longer sitting in the teacher's folder with a red mark across page 14. Instead, it had been returned to Sophia with several handwritten notes and a new grade written at the top. The grade was not the most important thing. At the bottom of the last page, Dr. Whitmore had written one sentence: "Your archival method is sound. Please revise the historical interpretation using the primary sources you located." Sophia read it twice. Then she closed the folder. She could have walked away satisfied. She had proved the citation was real. She had shown that the archive existed. She had demonstrated that her timeline was supported by original records. But something still bothered her. The research had uncovered a discrepancy larger than one assignment. The official school materials still presented the neighborhood's history as a simple sequence of redevelopment and relocation. The documents Sophia found suggested something more complicated. She wondered how many students had learned the simplified version without ever knowing that the original records told a fuller story. That afternoon, Dr. Whitmore called her back into the office. "I want to ask you something," she said. Sophia sat down. "Would you be willing to present your findings to the department?" Sophia looked surprised. "The history department?" "Yes." Dr. Whitmore placed the archive copies on the desk. "Not as a defense of your paper, as a research presentation." Sophia looked at the documents. "Why me?" Dr. Whitmore paused before answering. "Because you followed the evidence when it became inconvenient." Sophia did not respond immediately. The words meant more than a compliment about intelligence. They recognized the work behind the conclusion. "I can do it," she said. The presentation was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Sophia spent the weekend revising her paper. She separated every confirmed fact from every interpretation. She added the collection number, the transfer history, the dates of the primary documents, and the verification statement from the university archive. She removed 2 sentences that sounded more certain than the evidence allowed. She added 3 footnotes explaining where the later summary differed from the original records. On Monday evening, she read the entire paper aloud at her kitchen table. Her mother, Denise, listened from across the room. "You sound different," Denise said. Sophia looked up. "Different how?" "More certain." Sophia smiled. "I think I finally know the difference between being certain and being careful." Tuesday morning arrived with a cold blue sky over Philadelphia. Sophia entered the history department conference room carrying the same blue folder she had carried into the archive. Dr. Whitmore was already there with 2 other teachers and the department chair. Sophia connected her laptop and placed the primary documents on the table. She began with the question that had started everything. Why does the official timeline begin later than the earliest surviving records? No one interrupted. She showed the property review dated October 3rd, 1962, then the October 18th correspondence, then the October 23rd memorandum. She explained the transfer history and showed the municipal catalog entry proving that reference 19B 417 had existed long before the digital database was created. The room remained quiet, not doubtful, listening. When Sophia finished, the department chair looked at the documents. Where did you find all of this? The municipal archives and the university's special collections archive. And you verified each reference? Yes. Dr. Whitmore nodded. She did. Sophia looked at her teacher. For a brief moment, the accusation from room 214 seemed very far away. The department chair turned another page. We may need to update our teaching materials. Sophia did not expect that answer. Because of one student paper? He asked. Then he corrected himself. No, because of the primary sources behind it. Dr. Whitmore looked toward Sophia. I think the paper should become part of the department's research examples. Sophia lowered her eyes, almost embarrassed by the attention. I would be honored. After the meeting, Dr. Whitmore walked with her into the hallway. Sophia, I owe you an apology. Sophia stopped. The teacher continued carefully. I questioned your authorship before I questioned the gap in the records. I should have done that in the opposite order. Sophia looked at her for several seconds. She remembered the first day, the silence of the classroom, and the feeling of being judged before her evidence had even been examined. Then she looked at the folder in her hands. I appreciate you saying that. Dr. Whitmore nodded. Sophia could have demanded more. Instead, she offered something quieter. What matters is that you checked. The teacher looked down at the archive copies. You are right. Sophia walked away toward the library. Behind her, Dr. Whitmore remained in the hallway holding the original research paper. For the first time, the paper was not being treated as something that needed to be defended. It was being treated as what Sophia had intended it to be from the beginning. A question asked carefully, followed patiently, and answered by evidence. The following Monday afternoon, Sophia returned to the library where the entire search had begun. The same long windows filled the research floor with soft winter light, and the same fluorescent lamps hummed above the tables. Nothing about the room looked different, yet Sophia felt as though she had entered it as a different person. 6 weeks earlier, she had arrived with a simple school assignment and a question about a forgotten Philadelphia neighborhood. She had expected to find a few newspaper articles, perhaps an old map, and enough information to complete a paper. Instead, she had found contradictions, missing details, scattered records, and a reference number that had nearly cost her the credibility of her entire project. Now the blue folder on the table contained copies of the records that had changed everything. Collection 4 to 62. Box 23. Reference 19B 417. The property review dated October 3rd, 1962. The correspondence dated October 18th. The memorandum dated October 23rd. Sophia placed each document beside the next, just as she had done in the archive. The dates still formed the same quiet sequence. She opened her revised research paper and read the final page. Her conclusion no longer claimed more than the evidence could support. She had learned to separate what the documents proved from what she believed they suggested. That distinction had changed her entire understanding of research. Before leaving, Sophia walked to the reference desk and returned the temporary research materials. The librarian recognized her immediately. Did you find your answer? She asked. Sophia thought about the question. 6 weeks earlier, she would have said yes. Now she smiled. I found several answers. The librarian laughed softly. That sounds more like research. Sophia thanked her and closed her notebook. Outside, Philadelphia was moving through another ordinary afternoon. Cars passed along the street. People carried coffee cups and shopping bags. A bus pulled away from the curb. Sophia walked toward home with her backpack over one shoulder and the blue folder held carefully against her side. She thought about the first day in room 214. She remembered Dr. Whitmore asking whether she had written the paper herself. She remembered the silence that followed. She remembered how badly she had wanted to explain everything at once. But now she understood that the strongest answer had never been an argument. It had been the process. She had searched. She had checked. She had found a reference that others could not locate. She had followed it across institutions. She had compared dates. She had corrected her own notes. She had returned to the evidence whenever a question appeared. And eventually, the records had spoken for themselves. The following week, the history department added Sophia's revised paper to its research examples for future students. Dr. Whitmore also changed the assignment instructions, adding a section that encouraged students to compare digital summaries with primary sources whenever possible. Sophia never asked for special recognition. She simply kept studying. On the final Friday of the semester, she returned to room 214 after school. The classroom was empty. Afternoon sunlight rested across the desks, and the whiteboard still carried the remains of that day's lesson. Sophia walked to the desk where her paper had first been questioned. She placed a fresh copy of the revised research paper on top of the desk. On the first page, the title was followed by a carefully organized list of archival references. She ran her fingers lightly across the edge of the paper, then closed the folder. Dr. Whitmore appeared in the doorway. "Leaving already?" she asked. Sophia nodded. "I have somewhere to be." "The library?" Sophia smiled. "Probably." Dr. Whitmore smiled back. Neither of them mentioned the accusation from weeks earlier. They did not need to. The apology had been given. The evidence had been examined. The paper had been revised. The lesson had become larger than a grade. Sophia walked down the hallway toward the exit. Behind her, the classroom door remained open, and the late afternoon light stretched across the floor. She stepped outside into the cool Philadelphia air and looked toward the library in the distance. Then she kept walking. No speech. No celebration. No need for one. The truth had not arrived with noise. It had arrived on old paper, carried through archives and dates and patient questions, until finally it had found its way into the hands of the person who refused to stop looking.